Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. And today I thought we could do a really sit down chatty video today where we're just going to chat about my fantasy book recommendations. I feel like I want people to kind of come to my channel for book recs and also for other people to leave book recs in the comments down below as well, to help not only myself but also other people who have watched this video as well and who are a part of my channel. So I thought that we could just get into it. I'm gonna stop rambling and I'm just gonna kind of get in with it. So I feel like I'm just gonna start with kind of the series and fantasy series, but I have only got one fantasy standalone, which is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. So basically, we are following Addie LaRue, and she makes a deal with the devil, and she kind of makes a deal with the devil, and she wants to kind of be invisible and things like that. She doesn't want to be seen. I think that's what the bargain is. The bargain is to live forever but be remembered by none. And she makes this kind of deal out of frustration with her family, and she ends up, no one remembers who she is. So she could meet somebody and they would forget exactly who she was after they'd met. So she'd been living for 300 years at this point when this book, and you kind of see how she's starting her life. And one day she goes to a bookshop and she meets somebody called Henry, and one day he remembers meeting her. So then you're kind of following how kind of the life has happened, how she has kind of, how suddenly she's remembered when all along in her whole life all she has been is forgotten since she's made the deal with the devil in the bargain. I honestly love this book. I rate this a 5-star. It made me absolutely sob, but I genuinely enjoyed it, and I think I could reread this book again for sure. I feel like I want to do a reread very soon and maybe tab it and make it look all pretty and stuff. But it was so good, guys. I do recommend it if you haven't read this book before. I do also want to try some of V. Schwab's other books as well. So if you know any books, let me know. Let me know what you think of them, and I will add them to my TBR. The rest of the books are going to be series, so I'm going to chat through them as quick as I can, as I could chat about these books all day long. So I feel like I'm just going to kind of sum it up really quickly. So the first series I have is by Stephanie Garber, and I stumbled upon this series very fresh, new into reading. And I just thoroughly enjoyed the series. The series became one of my ultimate favorites for sure. And it was kind of ones that I was always recommending other people to read when they were getting into fantasy. And I do also really want to do a reread. So I feel like it's only right that I talk about it. And that is the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy. So you have Once Upon a Broken Heart, you have The Ballad of Never After, and then you have A Curse for True Love. Now, these are all by Stephanie Garber, and I absolutely loved this whole entire series to my heart. They were just everything. Jax and Evangelina were just everything. So I feel like I will start with the first book, as I obviously can't disclose what happens in the last two books, otherwise what's the point? But in Once Upon a Broken Heart, you are following Evangelina Fox, and she believes in happily ever afters. She loves the idea of marriage and just having a happy life, basically. And basically, she learns that her sister has fallen in love with who she wants to kind of be with and things like that. So she makes a deal with the devil. His name is Jax. Makes a deal with the devil. She bargains a little bit, guys, and yeah, she wants to stop the wedding basically. And in her way of basically trying to heal her wounded heart and stop the wedding, she makes a deal with the devil, and in exchange, he asks for 3 kisses. And then the 3 kisses that he can choose is at any place, any time, and of what his choosing is. So you kind of follow in kind of like a fairy tale kind of thing. And after she learns that bargaining with him was such a dangerous game, and she learns that the Prince of Hearts is who is Jax, is more than what was thought to let on. Now, I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I really loved their romance. I really loved their banter and their wit and everything about them. And I just think it was so fresh. It was so easy. It is a more of a YA romance. So if you're trying to get into romance, you don't want long words, or you just don't want overcomplicated fantasy, this is a really good place to start. And she also does have another series, which is kind of the Caraval series. So it's Caraval Legendary and Finale. That's kind of like the setup to this book. However, I read this series before. I read the Caraval series, and you don't actually have to read them before. I actually read this series, then went into the Caraval, and you wouldn't have noticed the difference if I'm being completely honest. But I definitely recommend giving these books a go. I thoroughly enjoyed them, and I know quite a few of my friends have as well. So that's our first book recommendation. The next book recommendation I have is Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab, which I've recently read, and I think I gave this a 4.5, a 4.75. It was so close to a 5-star, I know that, but I think it was either a 4.5 or 4.75, and I thoroughly enjoyed this book. So you are following three women with so these three women were basically planted in the same soil, so they shared the same kind of maker, give or speak, right? And you have to basically work out why all these three women, what they have in common, what kind of started it. So you are following someone back from 1532. You're then following a story about love in 1827 in London, and then you are following a story about rage in 2019 about in Boston. So you've got someone who's a young girl who was wild, wants to do what she wants to do, and she didn't want to conform to her parents. So she made a desperate plea with somebody, and she then became obviously a vampire. It is a vampire romance, and I think it's classed as a sapphic romance. You then have a story about love in 1827, and this is when a young woman lives on an idyllic kind of family estate until a moment of forbidden intimacy sees her shipped off to London. So Charlotte basically goes to London, and she has to live her life, and she goes to London, and she has to live her life and be kind of who she has to be. And then in 2019 in Boston, we're following a college person, and she basically, you find out how the other two women are connected to the Boston girl, and her name is Alice, and you find out why someone wanted revenge, the amount of revenge, because she didn't want to be turned into a vampire. She didn't have a clue about this world. And then she's obviously been turned. I'm just trying to say things without giving it away because I've read this book. I'm trying to be like so. And she's basically looking for answers and wants revenge. So you're following three vampires. So it is very good. I do recommend it, guys. Honestly, I really did enjoy this book. And Ellen Catherine rated this 5-star. And I am not surprised. I thoroughly enjoyed that. The next series I have is the Prison Healer series by Lynette Noni. I'm so sorry if you can hear the sirens in the background. It is so hot in my library room today, and the sun is literally just bearing into this room, so it's making it extremely hot. So I have had to open the window, guys. But the Prison Healer series by Lynette Noni, I absolutely devoured this series. I love this series. So it starts off with the Prison Healer by Lynette Noni. We then have the Gilded Cage, and then finally we have the Blood Traitor. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this series. So in this first book, you are following Kiva, and she has been stuck in a prison called Zelendov. That is the prison that she is trapped in. And you find out why she's been trapped there for 10 years. And then a rebel queen is arrived at the prison, and she has to basically keep her alive. And she basically, her dad used to work with rebels and things like that. And you kind of see why she was trapped in there. And she basically ends up having to do a series of challenges, and she has to learn to survive. So it's kind of like a challenge. I need to put my teeth back in. It's basically got trials, it's got challenges, and there is a romance in here. It is really good. It is on the younger side. I think this is more of a YA kind of romance. I can't remember. I think it is more of a YA. I can't think why it wouldn't be. I don't remember anything. Yeah, YA. It is YA. I've just checked the back. It is a YA. So it is another good way to get kind of sucked into a fantasy, but again, not have something too complicated. And I thoroughly enjoyed this series. The next series I have is the Folk of the Air series by Holly Black. Now, this is the Cruel Prince trilogy. You're probably not going to ever be surprised that you hear of it. But it is so good. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I do want to preface it's more of a fantasy than a romantasy. Their romance is very, very slim in here for quite a long time, guys. So if you're wanting more of a quick, fast-paced romantasy, these aren't the books for you. They are quick-paced in the fantasy side of things, but they are not they're not classed as romantasy, guys. I think this also might be a YA. Yeah, this is also YA, guys. So you are following Carden, who is kind of he's a fae. Carden is a fae, and he's ruthless. He basically bullies this woman called Jude, and her sisters also are. So Jude and her sisters' parents basically were murdered in front of them, and they end up having to go to this world. And it's a fairy world. They are mocked, they are tormented, they are bullied to the ends of the world, basically, by Carden and his friends. And Jude has to learn how to kind of survive in this world of fairies and how fairy magic is, what it does to mortals and things like that. And she basically, it is very enemies to lovers. It does, the romance does happen, but it is very slow, but it is an enemies to lovers. It doesn't happen from the first book, guys. It takes a while. I would love to reread this series. I definitely think this is a series I'm going to reread because I devoured this series and I loved it and it was all I needed. But you basically are following them through the 3 books as well. The next book I've got is Direbound by Sable Sorensen. Now, Furybound comes out in May, guys, so get reading. I really was stuck with this book because I'd seen everything about it and I was told it's fourth wing, but it meets wolves. And I was very worried because I really liked Fourth Wing, the first book, and I found Iron Flame mid-range, and then Onyx Storm, I don't know. I was very much like, I don't know. I feel like I'm going to have to reread the whole series again to know what I really want, but I'm kind of in my head at the moment, why do I want to reread the series I'm not that sure about? But I was then told this is kind of Fourth Wing and Meat Wolves. Now, it has got a lot of trials. It is similar to Fourth Wing, it is, but I think this is better than Fourth Wing personally. I really enjoyed it. It kept me on the edge. I read this very quickly as well. So you are following Marilyn, and she basically hates the idea of being bonded to a wolf, and she has her own reasons as to why she doesn't like to be bonded to wolves, and you're kind of following why you follow her hatred and why she doesn't like them. She has this thing called, I think it's called bonding trials. It's bonding trials. And basically, if you bond with a wolf, then you are safe. You are game. And as you can tell, probably by the sheer size of the book, she bonds with a wolf. And she kind of has to learn why. And she is bonded to a dire wolf who refuses to communicate. And you have to find why that wolf doesn't want to communicate with Merrin. And you now meet Stark Therion, and he is kind of the trainer. He teaches her, and you kind of you start to figure things out and trying to explain things that it won't ruin it. But there's like a competition and there's things that are going on, guys, but I would rather say go in blind with this, so I don't want to give too much away, but I would say go in blind because you wouldn't be disappointed, because that's what I did and I thoroughly enjoyed it, guys. The next book series I have is the Crimson Moth and the Rebel Witch duology, and I thoroughly enjoyed this series. I was a bit hit and miss about this series, just because I do like a good witch in a romantasy, but I don't like the idea of it being completely just about witches. I am more of like a vampire dragons lover. I was very worried. Like, I do like a fae as well. I do love fae. I just get really worried when it comes to just a witch in general, how that's gonna plan out, because obviously I know if you think of witches, you think, oh, they're going to focus on the power, they're going to focus on kind of the hierarchy of the witches, and I would rather just not. I don't need to know about that person unless I have to for obvious reasons. I don't really want to, and I was really worried that it wasn't, but this was so good, guys. So you are following Rune, and Rune is basically a witch, and they don't like witches. They think witches are possessed and deadly and not to have, and that they are dangerous and that they oppose curses on people and things like that. So Rune has to keep the idea that she is a witch close, so she can't tell anyone. Witches are outcasted and she must hide. She then spends her night as Crimson Moth, and That's the vigilant who rescues the witches from being perpetrated, basically, from being kind of killed off, so to speak. And basically, Rune basically rescues someone called Gideon Sharp, and Gideon Sharp, he's a witch hunter, basically. He hunts her kind. And there's a bit of a romance, guys. There's a bit of a romance. That's all I'm going to say. And basically, I really liked the idea of how it was written. I do want to say Kristen Ciccarelli's writing in this was amazing. I really enjoyed the way that it flowed. It wasn't choppy. It wasn't all over the place. Like, it flowed so naturally. And even with the second book, like, I really enjoyed them. I kind of read them very quickly for my liking. I would love to do a reread of these as well because I thoroughly enjoyed it. And it kind of, Crimson Moth leaves on a cliffhanger and a Rebel Witch pretty much picks up from that. So I also like that about a series. I don't want to be 20 years forward from what actually happened and then have to revert all the way back. I like a book in a series that leaves off exactly where that cliffhanger leads and you move forward as if, you know, you're starting a new chapter. That is what I like. And the next book series I have is Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross. And this is known as the Letters of Enchantment, I believe, series. And I loved this series, guys. I preferred Divine Rivals to Ruthless Vows. I think Ruthless Vows could have been longer. It could have been longer. There could have been more to it. But this is, I also think, is a YA as well, guys. I think it might be a YA. I'm not too sure. I don't know. I'm gonna just see if it says anything about, yeah, it says teens and for adults, so I don't know. She writes novels for teens and adults, but anyway, we've got two rivals who work they work in the same place. So there's currently a war going on and they kind of work in this kind of, it's kind of like a newspaper place. And they've got to try and compete against each other to write the best stories. Okay, they've got to get as much information, they've got to find the best stories that they can write. And you are following, what's their names, Iris and Roman. So this is Iris, this is Roman, and they end up finding a mysterious typewriter and they deliver letters underneath the door. I just think that's so cute, guys. And basically, Iris ends up she gets accepted into going to war, basically, and to write the stories. And she works for the columnist promotion at Oath Gazette, and they kind of want all the information on the war that's going on to provide to people. I think it's so good. I think the way that this idea of the magical typewriters that was kind of set up was really good. I think the way that this was written was so good. I remember sitting there reading that, and I got to the end of the page, and bearing in mind, like, Ruthless Vows had not even been identified as the next book when I read this. I'm pretty sure that we never even knew if we were going to get a second book at this point. So I had finished this book and it was just, yeah. But obviously it is an enemies to lovers, guys, as you can tell. It is an enemies to lovers, and I just think it is 100% worth it. Two rivals, two stories, two hearts, one fate. Just get to know, guys. If you haven't read this series already, I really recommend reading it. It's just so good. Now, this one, I don't think I've spoken a lot about it on my TikTok, but it has never come up on these books would have probably never come up on my channel, so I don't know why I started with it, but that is Alchemized by Celine Yu. I loved this book so much, and I probably should not have loved it the amount that I loved this book. So backstory to how I got this book. So my partner's mom got me this book. She knew I was talking about it for a while when she'd seen it, and I just seen the sheer size of it, and I was like, I don't think I can do it. I have literally watched TikTokers and YouTubers cry over this book. I don't know whether I could put myself through it. Bear in mind, I did read the Boys of Tobin series, and I did sob, yes, and I did, like, I did, yeah. But I just think the sheer size was enough to put me off. I annotated this, guys, as well, and I loved this book. So you are basically currently, you are following two people. So you are following Helena, who is now a prisoner of the war and of her own mind, and her resistance friends and allies have been brutally murdered. And basically you are following kind of before, during, well, it's more during and after the war kind of situation. And basically, there is also something called the Paladins, and the Paladins are kind of like the people who are not that great. They're not great. They're not the greatest people, and basically, you you basically see kind of what the war has done to her mind and why she needs to be used, and kind of what powers her mind possesses, and how she has all of this amazing information up in her brain, but she somehow forgets it due to the trauma of what she had seen and what she had witnessed during the time that she had been captured. And I think the the topics in this book is very dark. It is not a light-hearted romantasy book that's over 1,000 pages long. This book talks about love, betrayal, death, war, guilt, all of kind of everything that goes on in a war, basically. And you kind of find how two people on the wrong end of the spectrums can somehow come together, and you're also seeing kind of the ugliness of war. And I think it's one of those books that you do need to read the trigger warnings. The trigger warnings are in the book. I want to say it's either in the front or the back of the book. I think it's in the back then, because I remember it being in here, and I remember not reading it, thinking I read Dark Moments, it can't be that bad. I think I wish I did a little bit. Yes, Alchemized is a work of dark fantasy containing wartime violence, and a load of others, and it is a third point, so you are being told from third point. There are pictures and stuff at the back of the book to how she got it. I believe it was called Manacled originally, and then it got traditionally published and it was called Alchemized. I think I could reread this again because I did really enjoy it. I just look at the book and I'm like, I don't think I could. But I did enjoy it. I think it was very well written. This book tore me apart in places I didn't think would be possible. I cried, I sobbed. I genuinely think this book was written so well, and it's had such a lot of hype, and I do definitely agree with the hype, guys. And you're kind of, yeah, I don't want to really ruin it. I think I'd rather let people go in blind, because I did mostly go in blind for this book, and I'm very thankful I did. So I'm not going to touch too much upon it, but I did annotate my copy, and I'm so forever thankful and grateful that I read this book, because I think about this day. I think about this book to this day, and I read it back in, I think it was like October, November time. So I definitely, and to be fair, although it is like the pages and the words, yeah, they are big, but it's in 3 parts, by the way. So there is kind of a reading order people say to read it in. Obviously, read like part 1 and then get to I think it's the end of part 1 or it's the end of part 2, read the prologue again. Apparently it's supposed to be a meaningful impact. I did that, guys, and it hit just as hard as it just hits hard. Okay, guys, the next book I have is Our Infinite Fates by Laura Stevens. I really enjoyed this book. I loved this book. I did not expect to. So this is a YA. I think this is YA again. I feel like I'm just giving you YA romance Rex. I'm so sorry, guys, but I think this is YA. I want to say it is YA, because I know she writes. Yeah, she writes young adult, yeah. And then she also has a different name, LK Stevens, which is her adult one. But for young adult, she goes by Lauren Stevens. And I love this book. So this is basically about 2 people. They've loved each other in 1,000 lifetimes. They've killed each other in every one. So they basically, every lifetime that they live, they always end up together, no matter what. No matter what, they always end up together, and they always end up killing each other. And you basically restart all the time as to why that happens, and why they do kill each other. And why the curse is upon them. I also did annotate it. I didn't annotate this as heavy. It was cute, but I didn't annotate it as heavy. I also had a sprayed edition. I don't actually know. I think I got it from the Works. Not the Works, sorry, Waterstones. I think I got it from Waterstones. I think that's how I got the sprayed edition. But I really love the premise of this book, and I think as well, like, no matter what life they lived in, they still ended up back together, and that was their fate all along. And I just think it was so cute. But you find out why that curse was put on them and how to destroy it and things like that. And it was sensational, guys. I think I rated this a 4.75, so I thoroughly enjoyed it. And then the last 2 book recs for this video is Fear of the Flames and The Wrath of the Dragons. Now, Fear of the Flames by Olivia Rose Darling was originally indie published, and then it came out traditionally published. And I wasn't the biggest fan of the first one. I'm not going to lie, guys. I was not the biggest fan of the first one. I don't think I could care that much. And then I got to Wrath of the Dragons, and my opinion very quickly changed. But anyway, in this one, we are following Aloan, and she is the powerful princess of a daughter, and she is able to bond with creatures, being dragons. I love it. And she was able to bond with dragons. And years later, things had happened, and she wants to free the dragons that were stolen from her, basically. I think they were stolen from her. Yeah. Yeah, she needs to free them as they are, and save her dragons from her father, who has basically captured them and made them not very nice. And she basically meets Caden, who's an enemy of her father's, and I think you can imagine the rest of the story. But yeah, she has to try and free her dragons and save her people from the woes. And they have to trust each other. They have to go on adventures with each other. They have to defeat her father, pretty much. And then in this one, you are following basically where you've left off in here. You pick up from in here, and it was so good. So funnily enough, this was like a 3-star, and this was like a 4.5, nearly 5-star, I think. And I just loved it. I just love this series, guys. It's about dragons. You know I'm gonna love it. And I think the way that this story was written was so good. I thoroughly enjoyed humor that was in there as well. There was quite a bit of humor in there, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I think as well, like, I just love a dragon book. I genuinely do. I don't know what it is. I just always loved a dragon book. Like, I just love a romantic sea where it's got dragons or any type of mythical creature. But I also was going to think of including some others, but I didn't really want too many popular books in here. But again, I would recommend Quicksilver and Brimstone, the Fae and Alchemy series. I would recommend Fourth Wing. What else? I would also recommend the Lightlark series. The Chatty series is pretty good. Obviously, the Powerless series I do also recommend. A lot of Clarissa Broadbent's books I also do recommend, but again, you see so many people talk about them. I did kind of want to differentiate and maybe try and choose different ones. But that is for the end of today's video. I hope you found some really good recs for fantasy, and let me know if you've read any of these and what you think. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all the YouTubey stuff you know how to do, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!